The nightmare season continues after the Braves blow a massive lead in the ninth inning to get swept by Arizona. Let's talk about that and more on this special live edition of Braves Today. Yes, welcome on in to Braves Today for Friday, June 6th, your source of news, notes, and updates on your Atlanta Braves. I'm your host, Lindsay Crosby. You can follow me on social media at Crosby Baseball. You can follow the show on X, Braves_today. We have a Facebook page and Instagram as well. And you can find all my written work, bravestoday.com. That's the Braves Today Substack, as this is both a podcast and a newsletter. A special live show. As we were talking about in the chat last week, we are live. This is a live show. I'm going to take your questions. I'm excited to have everybody here in the chat. You guys have really responded really well to these live shows on Friday afternoon. So going to get to that today. We're going to get to your questions. I gave everybody homework on social media earlier in the week about who you think will be Atlanta's representatives for the All-Star game. So we're going to do that. We're also going to talk about the trade deadline. We're going to talk about the roster moves in the bullpen. But I do think we need to discuss last night's loss because this one was frustrating. All the losses have been frustrating, but this one, more so than any of the rest of them, was awful from the perspective of you had this game won. You showed rare offensive competency that you had not shown up until yesterday, right? This offense has been really bad for a long time. Look at Merrill Kelly having a perfect game through 3 and having a no-hitter through 5. Atlanta goes out yesterday. They tagged Brandon Pfaadt for 6 runs, 5 earned on 3, in 3 innings, 2 walks, 2 strikeouts. They hit 3 home runs. They have another 5 doubles. So that's 8 extra base hits in their 12 hits. Thank you. Sorry. And they are up 9-4 going into the 9th inning. They decide to have Scott Blewett come out for one more inning, and it does not work out, right? Up front, before we break down all of this, I'm okay with the concept of Scott Blewett pitching a second inning. I don't love it. I don't think you have to do it if you don't pull Grant Holmes so early. He comes out in the 4th inning with 1 out in the 4th inning. He gave up 4 hits, 3 runs, 2 walks, 4 strikeouts. But they pull him in the 4th inning. So Aaron Bummer pitches 1 2/3. He's been very good recently. De Los Santos goes 2 innings. And then they try to get 2 out of Scott Blewett, and it does not work out. The 9th inning, and Blewett gave up a solo shot, I think, in the 8th. Yeah, it was Ketel Marte. Of course it was. Ketel Marte solo shot in the 8th. But in the 9th inning here, Eugenio Suarez strikes out. Lourdes Gurriel hits a home run. Okay, it's now 10-5. Tim Tawa walks and then steals second base. Defensive indifference, technically. Alec Thomas hits a home run. Now it's 10-7. They do a mound visit. I think they do a mound visit after the home run to give Iglesias time to get up. Jose Herrera walks. They go to Iglesias. And at that point, it goes from uncertain to the wheels falling off. Corbin Carroll doubles. This is one of those, it is very hard for me to be mad about the Corbin Carroll double. Okay? Change up a foot below the zone. Corbin Carroll goes down and gets it with a hard hit ball on a out of the zone by a foot. Goes down and gets it. Hard to be mad about that one. Ketel Marte singles. That scores a run, now 10-8. Gerardo Perdomo pops out. You get the second out. You're 1 out away from ending this. Eldamo Vargas singles. That was if I remember right, that was a changeup that was 1.5 feet outside. Iglesias gave up a bunch of runs. He wasn't terrible. I don't think he was great. He wasn't terrible. The Ketel Marte singles a changeup a foot off the plate outside. But Vargas gets the single that scores Carroll. It's now 10-9. Again, 2 outs. Eugenio Suarez then gets the double, and it's a changeup down and in on a 3-2 count. He was willing to walk him if he had to, but it's a changeup that is off the plate in, and Suarez turns on it, double down the line, scores 2 more. After that, Gurriel walks, Tim Talla lines out, the inning's over. Atlanta can't get it done in the 9th. Somebody mentioned this in the chat already, and we had this. It was in the team's post-game note. So shout out to the Braves comm staff. They're really good with this kind of stuff here. This was, I had it here. This was the first time the Braves had lost, being up by 6 or more runs after 8 innings since 1973. I think it was a span of 366 games. And that was Willie Mays had the pinch hit single, 2-run single for the New York Mets in that one. And Sam makes a good point in the chat, and Jake Mastriani of Locked On Braves made the same point in the post-game show yesterday that we did. It's easier to hit Raisel Iglesias when he's not throwing the slider. The big adjustment Atlanta was making because of Iglesias' struggles was they were backing off on the slider and just not having him throw it. He didn't throw the slider, but because of that, there was less options there. He now does not have a breaking ball. He's throwing fastball, a four-seamer. He's throwing a sinker. He's throwing a changeup. He does not have a breaking ball to throw right now, which is very rare for any successful pitcher in the majors. And a lot of people, this is a struggle here. A lot of people are wanting the Braves to fire Brian Snitker. And we do this a lot. I think 2 things could be true at once. It is not Brian Snitker's fault that the team is as bad as they are, right? He's gotten things wrong when it comes to bullpen management. He has still not been aggressive enough at times at making moves, especially getting guys out of roles. But the players are the ones that are not performing. The offense, the hitters are the guys that are not hitting. The relievers are the ones that are not hitting their spots and executing their pitches. And there's a great analogy here in the chat from Doug. Snit isn't playing with the same hand that he had in previous years. This is an underperforming roster. And the reason it's underperforming is the players are not getting it done. So I understand the idea of fire Brian Snitker. Get a new voice in there to try to fire the guys up. But at the same time, it feels incredibly unlikely based on the fact that he is in his 49th year in the organization. He hasn't been great, but he's not the reason they lost this game yesterday. He's not the reason they lost on Wednesday. The players are the reason here. And has he deployed them as effectively as possible every single time? No. But if they were executing, if they were hitting their pitches, if they were making their pitches, Snitker's mismanagement at times would not have nearly the same impact that it does. So I understand people wanting Brian Snitker to be fired. There was a question in here really early when we started. I want to say it was from Super Null VA. If I was a general manager, would Snit be allowed on the plane for San Francisco? I wouldn't be firing Brian Snitker. I don't think that fixes anything. Would I kind of make sure that hey, if you have a rental, don't sign a lease for 2026? I don't think I'd be firing him. I don't know what that does. I don't know what that actually accomplishes. And that's kind of the problem. That's kind of where we are right now. All right. Let's take a quick break. And when we come back, there's a question in here in the chat. Let's talk about the roster moves that were leaked last night. As of right now, they are not yet official. These have not yet been announced. But let's see. Let's talk about what they're supposed to do. We'll do that next, right here on Braves Today. Welcome back to Braves Today. Lindsay, Crosby, our live show that we do here every Friday. I'm excited to get to your questions. audio people, love you guys. I'm going to do my best to read these questions so that you're not missing anything as well. And we heard after the game, the news was broken, as it always is. It was broken by one of the national guys. And the news that we got was that they were going to call up Craig Kimbrell after the game. Scott Blewett was being DFA'd. And then Daysabel Hernandez was going on the injured list, which means that they could bring back Dylan Dodd, who was sent down earlier in the week and can't come back less than 15 days unless he's replacing somebody injured. I took a hard time to get that out. They're putting a new roof on my house right now, and I keep hearing them on the roof above my head, and it threw me off for a second there. Sorry about that, friends. If you hear noise in the background, that's what it is. So, a couple things. One, I don't necessarily love the concept of getting rid of Scott Blewett. Okay. I feel like Blewett, multiple years of team control, he probably should have stayed, and Rafael Montero should have been the one to go. If you look at the two Montero's been negative WAR for this team, negative 0.2 WAR. Strikeout rate's a little bit better than Blewett's. It's like 23% to Blewett's like 22%. But in every other way, Scott Blewett has been better. And there's somebody, I don't remember who it is, there was somebody who was talking about, well, Scott Blewett's fielding independent pitching is really bad. And it's a 730 in Atlanta. But the issue with using the fielding independent pitching to say Scott Blewett is bad is because he's only thrown 16 1/3 innings, and fielding independent pitching strips out a lot of the context here, because fielding independent pitching is only things that you can control as a pitcher. So it's home runs, it's walks, it's strikeouts. That's really about it. So 730 FIP, yeah, because he's allowed 5 home runs. 3 of them were yesterday. Of course, the fielding independent pitching is going to be bad. His expected ERA in StatCast is a 3.42. The actual inputs based on what he has thrown and how guys have hit them, he's been pretty decent. If it was me, and shout out Michael McDermott, covers the Arizona Diamondbacks really well. Love that you're in here. I saw your comment on Snit. I'll get to that in a second. There is a possibility the reason they made the decision to cut Blewett is maybe they hoped he would make it through waivers. Rafael Montero, he's been really good at getting swings and misses, like 91st percentile in whiff, but one of the worst walk rates in baseball. His ERA, his expected ERA is 4.21. It's better than his 5.14 actual ERA, but it's still like he's still more of a liability than Blewett is. And I see, Doug, you're in the comments here. Braves are on the hook for Montero's $3 million deal. Blewett's a minimum wage player. That's why Blewett had to go. You're on the hook for Montero's money whether or not he's on the roster. If you cut him right now, you still have to pay him. And so that's a sunk cost. And really, the way it should be is Atlanta should be saying, okay, we're going to go ahead. This has not worked out. Blewett is cheap. We have multiple years of control over Blewett. If we DFA Montero and somebody happens to pick him up any point in time in the season, it does lower what we have to pay him. You actually could pay less if Montero's on somebody else's roster, because there is an offset in here. So if nothing else, Blewett should have stayed, Montero should have gone. I am a little bit concerned about Craig Kimbrell, not from the perspective of getting Craig Kimbrell back, right? I do think he can give you something and he can be of use to this pen. My concern, and we've seen this with Brian Snitker now a couple different times. We've seen this with him, with Eddie Rosario. My concern is that he's going to automatically assume that Craig Kimbrell is the old Craig Kimbrell that he remembers. That it's the old Craig Kimbrell that was dominant and was on track to be a Hall of Fame closer. That's a different Craig Kimbrell than who's been pitching in Gwinnett right now. This Craig Kimbrell is averaging on the season 93.2 miles an hour on his four-seam fastball. He's getting swinging strikes on it 14% of the time. He has an overall 12.7% swinging strike rate on his entire arsenal, curveball, sweeper, couple changeups in there. And when you look at the actual data of what Craig Kimbrell has done, again, it's not bad, but it's not enough to have him replace Raisel Iglesias. And my concern is that that's what Snit is going to try to do. He's going to say, well, we're going to sit Iglesias for a couple days, and we're going to let Craig Kimbrell be the guy. And you can't do that. Not with this version of Craig Kimbrell. And Sam made a great point in here. I've made this joke before. Can we save Snitker from himself? It's frustrating that we have to think that way. Part of the reason why you saw them DFA Eddie Rosario is Snit can't use him in the wrong situation if he's not here. And I'm a little bit concerned about the idea of just not understanding who Craig Kimbrell is now versus who he was back in the day. And Michael had a great point a few minutes ago when we were talking about Snit, kind of thinking that the Braves will give Snitker the chance to retire after the season or take an advisory role in the front office. It's his year 49 for him. I absolutely expect Snit to get one more season with the organization, but not as manager. They're going to give him an opportunity to special assistant to the GM, to work with minor leaguers as a roving instructor, to do something else to hit that 50-year milestone, but he will not have an opportunity to manage the Atlanta Braves next season. I don't know exactly who that person is going to be. If they do make a change, I don't think I want Mark DeRosa to be that guy. I know a couple people have asked about that. You're just in a situation here where he doesn't have a lot of experience. He doesn't. And it doesn't make sense to give him the managerial job of a team that we're expecting to be back into contention next season. The idea that I have here, George Lombard as new manager. He's from Atlanta. He was drafted by the Braves. We were going to hire him as a fielding coordinator, and the Dodgers grabbed him to be the first base coach. So he was there for 3 World Series, including the one they won in 2020. And then he became the bench coach for the Tigers. And the Tigers are a team that have become better than the sum of their parts. That team rallied last year. They were super clutch down the stretch, made the postseason. They've been fantastic this year. It feels like there's something intangible there. He's a guy who has been in a major league dugout recently, unlike Mark DeRosa. George Lombard is my pick to be the manager. I don't know if that's who they're going to go with, obviously. But it does feel like you're going to see all the usual suspects. Skip Schumacher is probably going to get an interview, all that kind of stuff. Honestly, I'd be fine if they want to talk to like Joe Madden, see if Joe Madden wants to do it. Walt Weiss is probably the guy if they're going to stick internal. I'm at the point of I'm ready to not stick internal. I'm ready to go outside the organization, bring in a fresh voice. We heard when Kevin Seitzer was fired last year that he said the guys just weren't listening anymore, right? Like they were too caught up in themselves and they weren't able to listen to the instruction because they were all pressing and trying too hard and that they needed a new voice. And they went with a new voice in Tim Hires. I'm at the point of you need a new voice, bring in somebody from outside the organization. And I do honestly think that George Lombard, that's a good option. Smith the Great had a great point in here. His son, George Lombard Jr., is a shortstop in the Yankees organization. His other son is in next year's draft. So definitely might be fun. Shout out to Emmanuel. It is a good point that the Braves obviously watch this podcast and read the newsletter, so he's going to get an interview now. A couple people did ask about Freddie Gonzalez, Chipper. Chipper hasn't given the inclination that he wants the travel. Even when he was working with the organization, one of the big things for Chipper Jones was he didn't want to go on the road. He wanted to be home while his kids were there. I know 2 of his kids are in college now at Auburn, actually, like here in town with me. So maybe he's a little more open to traveling now. But for a while, he just did not want to travel. That was the thing. He did not want to go on the road with the team. And that's why he never took an official full-time coaching position. He was just a hitting consultant. Freddie Gonzalez, and shout out to Michael for the question, but why do I get the feeling it's going to be Freddie Gonzalez? I initially thought that when they first brought Freddie Gonzalez back, but I still maintain the position that I just don't see them firing Snitker during the season. It's so out of character. This change, going away from Tuiasa Sopo at third base and bringing in Freddie Gonzalez, that's the first time in Atlanta that Alex Anthopoulos has made an in-season coaching change. Everybody has to remember, he didn't hire, Brian Snitker took the job from Freddie Gonzalez before AA got here. So the Braves have never, under AA, made an in-season coaching change until now. So I don't expect that to change. Yes, this is totally collapsing as we speak. It just doesn't feel like they're going to make that change. Other moves in the bullpen, I still think that you may potentially have an option for Rafael Montero to be on the way out if he has another couple stumbles. This really felt like Blewett was the scapegoat for yesterday. I still don't think Blewett deserved to go. I would have rather kept Blewett than Montero. But now you're in a situation where Montero's the next guy out. You've got a lot of options in AAA. Yes, this all kind of does go back on Alex Anthopoulos for not doing enough to reinforce the bullpen over the winter from a quality perspective. He went quantity over quality. You found some pieces that have worked. And De Los Santos has not been bad. You found some pieces that have worked. But this all kind of goes back to Alex Anthopoulos not doing enough to reinforce it on the postseason, or reinforce it in the offseason. Question from Smith the Great. Does Brian McCann want to be part of the coaching staff? If I remember right, I think he's going to be doing something during the Futures game. Chipper Jones is the manager of the NL team for the Futures game. And I think Brian McCann's going to be part of the coaching staff for that specific game. I don't know if I'm down for him being a full-time coach, because I just don't think this organization is at the place where you can just bring in a novice coach, a guy who's not actually done it in the majors. We've seen some guys transition straight into the dugout and be good. David Ross was not the problem for those Cubs teams. Stephen Vogt has been good in Cleveland. I would not be opposed to David Ross getting an interview for this job. Shout out, he's actually an Auburn alum. Shout out Auburn Tigers there. But I don't necessarily think that Brian McCann's the right fit, simply because we all expect this team, whatever moves they make at the deadline, to be a contender next year. Do you want to trust a contending team to a rookie manager? It feels like that's the issue with Chipper. That's the issue with Brian McCann. Yes, they're franchise legends. I want them to be part of the team. I want Chipper to be more involved than it feels like he is right now, where he's in the seats watching the game and starting Twitter fights with Tennessee baseball for some reason. But I just don't know if trusting them with the fate of a playoff contending team is the right move. But in just a second, let's talk about the trade deadline, because there's some parallels here to 2021 and 2 and really 4 as well. But I do think the Braves might end up being in a different situation at this trade deadline than they were in the previous ones. We'll do that next, right here at Braves Today. Welcome back to Braves Today. Lindsay, Crosby. I'm not going to do a whole ad read here, but I just want to make sure you guys know ChinookSeedery.com, promo code BRAVES gets you 10% off your order. It does also give you free shipping on orders over $40, and it supports Braves Today. So check it out. Chinook Seedery, CHINOOK, ChinookSeedery.com, promo code BRAVES, 8 flavors. They're fantastic sunflower seeds. Okay. This week on Braves Today, I wrote a series of articles in the newsletter about the different approaches Atlanta could take as they approach the trade deadline. We started off early in the week about acquiring an outfielder. We talked about acquiring a pitcher. Do you get a starter? Do you get a reliever? I actually proposed a package deal with 3 different acquisitions. I actually said, I believe it was, you called the Angels and you got Taylor Ward, You got, I'm trying to remember exactly who all it was, but I want to say it was Taylor Ward. It was Kenley Jansen, maybe. And, so an outfielder, a reliever, and then Tyler Anderson, a starter. You got all three there. And Sam makes a great point in the chat. AA was clearly financially constrained in the offseason. Going off of what he told us right after the All-Star, or right after the wild card loss, like a day and a half later, to what actually happened, it's very clear from between when he talked to us and when the offseason actually started, things were different. Something had changed. And I do think, to Sam's point, they were required to not, or payroll money was taken away or whatever happened. And that's why you saw Atlanta go with a quantity over quality approach. I haven't looked to see what the money impact would be of bringing in Taylor Ward, and the Kenley Jansen and all of that. But if the Braves were to acquire at the deadline, I do think it's going to have to be shoring up left field with somebody who can play in the postseason, because Jurickson Profar cannot. It's going to have to be getting a new back end of your bullpen guy. In that case, it'd be Kenley Jansen back in Atlanta for a second stretch. We'll just collect all of the Curacao baseball players, right? It'll be Tyler Anderson would give you another option in the rotation. This is if you buy. If you end up selling, I do think there is a really interesting, it's going to be Marcell Ozuna is the main piece that you would be selling, right? He's a free agent after the season. We do have to figure out what the value would be with the hip injury that he's dealing with. We don't know how much it's diminished his game. It clearly has diminished his game a little bit, but I do think the solution that I would do would be move Marcell Ozuna to try to get something there, right? That would be exactly what I would do. I would also try and look at, is there something you can do for Raisel Iglesias? We don't actually know. But those are probably the two guys that would be, if you were selling off the 25 roster with the intention of contending in 2026. I don't think you would move Chris Sale because you will have team control for him next season. Quick question in here from Moises Perez. Profar is close to returning. Is there any way to know if he's been practicing during his suspension? As I understand it, he is not allowed to be in team facilities during the suspension. So if he does anything, it's entirely on him. It has to be solely on his own, separately from the team. Now, I do believe there is a time period before the activation date when he's allowed to go into the minors and start working, right, into the minor leagues. I don't know exactly when that is, but anything that he is doing right now is entirely on his own at a hitting facility with an independent ball team or something like that. So I'm assuming that he's working. We just don't know that for a fact. He might have done nothing for 3 months, which is just the worst case scenario, right? Kind of looking in here at some of the questions here. Call Washington and trade for Michael Soroka. They're ahead of the Braves in the standings right now. Like, I don't think they would trade Soroka right this moment. Now, are things going to be different at the trade deadline? It's absolutely possible. Things could be different at the trade deadline, but right now, the Nationals are ahead of the Braves in the standings. They're not going to be selling, and especially not in the division to the Braves. Now, I wanted the Braves to sign Soroka in the offseason. I wanted them to bring him back. But like right now, Nationals are a game and a half ahead of Atlanta, and I'm not going to call them fraudulent. They do have a negative 46 run differential. So Atlanta's, by contrast, is still actually positive. They're 27-34 with a +6 run differential because Atlanta's played so many one-run games and they've lost so many one-run games. The expected win-loss total for the Braves is still over 500. Washington they're 29-33, and that's kind of deserved, right? But I don't think they would trade Michael Soroka right now. Maybe things are different for both these teams at the end of July. There was a question in here. I think it was Jesse, and I saw where Emmanuel pointed it out about moving a long-term deal, like moving guys on a long-term deal. I do think, and that's what I wrote in today's newsletter, which I'm going to be honest is not being received super well, because I was doing the whole progress of if they buy to if they sell, expiring deals. Today's article, today's newsletter was if they completely tear it down. And the focus of that was Ronald Acuna Jr. That is the extremest of extreme tear down rebuilds, is you move Ronald Acuna Jr. And the reason that I even wrote that was the perspective of, if you look at what the return was for Juan Soto in those deals, and I'll remind you, the first deal from the Padres, Mackenzie Gore, who looks like, I think he's like leading baseball in strikeouts right now for Washington. Shortstop C.J. Abrams, who's had some defensive errors, but is still a good player. Outfielders Robert Hassel and James Wood. Wood looks like he could be a superstar. And right-hand pitcher Darwin Susana, who's in the minors. The Yankees deal was Michael King, who, when he's healthy, looked like one of the better starters in baseball. A bunch of other starters, Drew Thorpe, Johnny Brito, Randy Vasquez, and catcher Kyle Higashioka. And that was for Juan Soto when he had less team control and was making more money, right? The season in San Diego in 23, Juan Soto made $23 million. In New York last year, he made $31 million on the final year of his deal. I'm not saying the Braves are going to do this. If the Braves were to attempt to move Ronald Acuna Jr., the acquiring team would be getting 3 seasons of a former MVP at $17 million a year. It's absolutely realistic to think about the return for that would be better than what the Padres got, or than what the Padres gave up for Juan Soto. And the core of that Washington Nationals team right now that is ahead of the Braves in the standings is Wood, Abrams, Gore, and a high first-round pick in Dylan Cruz. Like, that is the core of that team right now. And so you can see how if the Braves were to get the right package, you'd have to have a stud shortstop prospect in there. If the Braves were to get the right package, you absolutely could kickstart the next competitive wave for the Atlanta Braves. I don't think it would happen, honestly. I think you're legitimately at a maybe 5% tops. But the thing that I think about is the extension for Ronald Acuna Jr., the future extension. He said he wants to be in Atlanta for the rest of his career, right? He's got 3 years of team control left after this one because of 2 options. But we just saw Juan Soto is making close to $50 million a year. We just saw Vlad Guerrero Jr. sign a massive deal. We're in a new era of top at their position players signing absurd contracts in both length, total value, and average annual value. And I'll remind you, Atlanta under Alex Anthopoulos has not given out any multi-year deal for more than $22 million a year. Matt Olson's making that. Austin Riley's making that. Spencer Strider's going to be making that. Nobody is making more than $22 million. Is Atlanta going to be willing to pay Ronald Acuna Jr. his ask of $40 to $50 million a year? Because everything that I've heard, I have no reason to think he's going to accept another below market deal. And granted, the Braves did not force him to sign the last one. He was a young player. He took the deal. It's a two-way street. But I legitimately do not know if he's going to be willing to take a deal that's not in that $40 to $50 million a year range. At the same time, his sprint speed has been dropping as a result of 2 torn ACLs. I pulled it up when I wrote that article. In 2021, his speed was 97th percentile, 29.4 feet per second. I accidentally put it in the newsletter. I just saw this. 229.4 feet per second. I don't know how fast that is, but I feel like that would make him the fastest player in baseball. 29.4 feet per second, 97th percentile in 2021. This season, it's a 47th percentile mark of 27.1 feet per second. Sometimes we see guys who have if they have multiple injuries to the lower body, we see them lose speed. Royce Lewis right now has one of the lowest sprint speeds in all of baseball. Some of that may be him taking it easy. Same thing with Ronald. But still, this is a situation where if he's healthy, and that is an if with Ronald Acuna Jr., he's going to get a massive contract. And every single one of us in the live chat, listening on audio after the fact, we all know the Braves are not going to give that to him. And Emmanuel makes a great point in the chat, talking about want to be a Brave for life. Freddie said the same thing. Dansby said the same thing. Max Fried said the same thing. And at the end of the day, none of them ended up in Atlanta. Now, you can ascribe whoever blame. You can say that's Freddie's agent's fault. You can say that's Freddie's fault. You can say that's AA's fault. I don't think it matters. The point is, they all say they want to be in Atlanta their whole careers. Not everybody does it. And Chipper Jones went to Freddie and specifically told him, if you want to be a Brave in Atlanta your entire career, go ahead and get the deal done. If you make it to free agency, you're not going to come back. Freddie didn't come back. Dansby didn't come back. Max Fried didn't come back. There's a whole nother conversation about what does that do as far as your clubhouse leadership and all of that. That's a different conversation. But the point is, if you believe that Ronald Acuna Jr. is not going to re-sign with you, it is just a matter of time before you either decide to trade him for assets or you let him walk and you get a qualifying offer on him and you get a draft pick in return. There will be a new CBA between now and then. Maybe the qualifying offer system changes. But that is the only reason that in that article, that I even suggested the Braves could consider trading Ronald Acuna Jr. Because honestly, if you think that the problems on this roster can't be fixed in one offseason, if you think that, hey, there's so much going on with this team, we've got to move some major pieces, we have to completely overhaul this team, then best case scenario, you're getting back to contention at the very end of his team control. So you, in essence, lose the ability to cash in on his value. That's all I'm saying, okay? David Thatcher says Acuna will be a Met with his brother. I really hope not. That's a nightmare scenario for me. If Ronald goes to New York, which I don't know how they would balance Juan Soto as a DH and Ronald Acuna Jr. as a DH, but it's just, I feel terrible about that. The concept of that makes me cringe. I would rather send Ronald to the Dodgers than to send Ronald to the Mets, honestly. I'd rather make him a Los Angeles Dodger than to make him a New York Met. But I do think we all agree that it would be really tough for the fan base, right? Like, it's what everybody would hate if we were to trade Ronald Acuna Jr. And that's a lot of the response to that article on social media, people who didn't read it, one. But two, it was, they're going to lose the fan base if they do that. Yeah, well, they're losing the fan base now just by losing. So we'll see what happens. Again, I don't think the Braves are going to do this. I just wanted to write the piece as part of the process of writing the entire week of a progression of different approaches to the trade deadline. In just a second, I asked you guys what you thought about the loss yesterday. What's the worst way to lose, as well as who you guys thought should be the also representatives for the Braves this summer. Final ad break. We'll do that next, right here on Braves Today. Final segment of Braves Today, Lindsay, Crosby. Thank you guys to everybody who's here for the live chat. There's 100 and something people in here for the live show. I want to talk real quick about that loss from the perspective of, here's what you guys told me. Here's what you guys told me about the worst ways to lose. And a couple people had interesting responses. One of my favorites was actually, I refuse to answer to ensure the Braves don't take it as a challenge. Thought that was perfect. Like, it feels like every time we think this roster has hit rock bottom, this season has hit rock bottom, they find a worse way to do it. And to me, to finally have the offense do what they did yesterday and then to lose comes out worse. And a lot of people said it's just this loss, but add injuries, right? There's no, it's really hard to do worse losses than what we saw yesterday. Maybe like a no-hitter for Chris Sale through 9 innings. And then, or through 8 innings, I guess, or 9 innings or whatever, and you lose at the 10th or something like that. It's just, it's gut-wrenching. And other than like an injury allowing the winning run to end the game, I just really don't see a worse way to lose than what happened yesterday. Some people were like, same ninth inning meltdown except it's game 7 of the World Series. Hey, in that case, you made the World Series. Like, you won games to make the World Series. This is just something, you're not good and you get destroyed right here. But the All-Star conversation, I think, is a better conversation because every team is required to have at least one representative at the All-Star game. And we can debate whether or not that is a dumb position. I do think it's kind of dumb, honestly. This sounds terrible. There are some teams that just don't really deserve to have somebody out there. They've been bad. They've been bad all season. You mean to tell me that there's somebody on the Colorado Rockies that legitimately has played well enough to be in the All-Star game? It feels impossible to have 11 wins on the season and have somebody in the All-Star game. But a couple things for the All-Star game. And I've seen Doug's in the comments with this. I had Emmanuel. He had a comment when I put this on social media back in, I think it was on Wednesday or something. Ronald Acuna Jr. may very well get voted into the All-Star game. He's always one of the most prolific vote getters. The voting opened right after he came back from injury. It's entirely possible Ronald Acuna Jr. gets voted into the All-Star game. And that right there is one of the main arguments for not trading Ronald Acuna Jr., right? Because the fact that he is so beloved around the sport, he's idolized. I remember talking to Atlanta's international director back in January when we signed the class of international free agents. And we talked about the Ronald Acuna Jr. effect. When they're scouting guys in Venezuela, those players want to be members of the Atlanta Braves simply because of Ronald Acuna Jr. Because he's in the organization, they look up to him, they idolize him, they want to be Braves because of him. So there's an argument right there to necessarily not make that trade. Sethan in the chat, Hunter Goodman of the Rockies has been good. It's a good point. I forgot about him. He's got 10 home runs. He's batting .280 as a guy who can play both catcher and first base and left field, which is it's great if you have him in fantasy. Fantastic in fantasy. He has a lot of versatility and value there. But forgot about Hunter Goodman. He could make it. Emmanuel says Baldwin could be selected as a reserve. I do think that the coach vote and the player vote, you may see a guy like a Drake Baldwin make it. I do think Chris Sale gets picked. Chris Sale feels like a pretty safe bet to get picked. If I had to pick two, I'd pick Ronald Acuna Jr. I'd pick Chris Sale. That's probably, I think, the only two Braves that I would be taking in this year's All-Star game. I'm scanning the stats. Spencer Schwellenbach, it's a good point, Lab. He may be another pitcher. The Braves could get two pitchers in there, and if they do, it would be Schwellenbach and Sale. The National League just feels like if you run through the NL right now, Paul Skeens obviously going to make it. They love Paul Skeens. Logan Webb is probably going to make it. You're probably going to see Hunter Green in there. If Chris Sale makes it, Zach Wheeler's going to make it. You're already getting to 5 or 6 starters. Chris Sale, to Ron's point, after that tough start, he's pitching at not only an all-star level, he's pitching at last year's Cy Young level ever since that rough start. Michael says Sale and Ozuna. Ozuna may make it. He does share a position with Shohei Ohtani, though. And that's the hard part is looking at where these guys compare at their positions. You do have Shohei Ohtani there. They may get both Ozuna and Shohei. They may not take Ozuna. We'll see what happens. I don't remember if they have two DHs or just one at the All-Star game. But either way, they could take both. You're right. But I think your list is pretty small. I think your list is Acuna, maybe on a fan vote. Sale, maybe Schwellenbach, maybe Ozuna. I think that's about it. I do think it's going to be cool where Max Fried starts the All-Star game in Truist Park. That's not going to be tough to look at or hard or anything. My hope for Max Fried is that the ballpark, which is not going to be entirely Braves fans, right? A lot of national tickets are sold to this thing, but it will be a bunch of Braves fans. I really hope that he gets a good, a standing ovation from the Braves fans in attendance, because Max Fried has ascended to a new level in New York. The Yankees are one of the better pitching development systems in the game. They've tweaked his two-seamer. They've tweaked his changeup a little bit. He's looking amazing. I'm happy for Max Fried that he's looking so good. We all know that Braves were not going to do a deal that long for a starting pitcher. They never have. It just makes total sense because his manager, Aaron Boone, by virtue of being in the World Series last year, his manager with the Yankees is managing the All-Star team for the American League. So it's really easy for him to pick his own guy unless he's specifically trying to not look like he's playing favoritism by picking his own guy. So happy for Max Fried. We'll see some other former Braves. Freddie Freeman's obviously going to make it as well. But that's kind of tough there. Again, apologies for all of the noise. I think somebody just fell off my roof. It's so loud because they're putting a new roof on. Want to kind of wrap this up real quick. You guys have any questions, go ahead and throw them in the chat at the very end here. The matchup this weekend. This is you've got a little bit of you've got some tough pitchers you have to face, and that's the issue. The Braves never play well when they go out west. 1. 2, you've got to face some really good pitchers here. Spencer Swellenbach goes tonight against Hayden Birdsong, young pitcher, 3-1, 2.37 ERA. He's been very good. Thank you, Ron. He's been very good recently. After that, Bryce Elder versus Logan Webb. 5-5, 2.55 ERA. Again, Logan Webb's been one of the best pitchers in the National League this year. And then you've got Spencer Strider, this version of Spencer Strider versus Landon Routt. This is 3-4, 3.18 ERA. This is a very, very good Giants rotation. Now, Smith the Great makes a great point in the chat. The Braves did take 3 of 4 from the Giants last year. I think part of that, I'm hopeful that's something that can be replicated. They don't get to face Robbie Ray. Good point from Moises. I think Robbie Ray pitched last night. We talked about him on the game night show on MLB Game Night on Locked On last night. Robbie Ray, I think, pitched yesterday. So they miss him, but still not a great matchup. And then after this, the Braves go to Milwaukee for a Brewers team that is above 500, but they haven't quite hit their stride. But it's a team. They run a lot. They've got decent defense. It's really going to be interesting to kind of see what happens there. Another thing here from Michael as we're kind of wrapping this up. If the game was anywhere else, he'd make the argument for Skubal to be starting over Max Fried, but it's in Atlanta and it means more to Fried to start it. I kind of agree. I think the fact that it's his manager combined with the team he came from that brought him up after acquiring him as a prospect, I do think that that's probably the determination on Fried starting over Skubal. You can't go wrong with either one, honestly. So reminder on this series, 10:15 start time tonight. So gross. After this, Saturday, 4:05 p.m., Sunday, 4:05 p.m. Ron has a great question in the chat. Last West Coast trip was 0-7. We got to do better than that, right? You can't go 0-7 on this West Coast trip because it's only 3 games. But the goal is to at least win 1, if not 2. Giants are 35-28. They're a pretty good team. Goal is to at least win 1 game or more. And Jesse makes a great point here. I think this road trip is going to determine which direction the Braves go at the deadline. I wouldn't say it's just this road trip, but yeah, you got 6 games here against contenders. And the thing for me is I always look at how a team does against other contenders. That's my informal kind of measuring stick, right? How do you do against teams with winning records? This year, as of right now, teams with a record over 500, the Braves are 14-23. So if you believe in this theory of mine that I've never really fleshed out, if you believe in this theory of mine that you can assess the quality of a ball club by how well they do against other teams that are winning clubs, then it's obvious the Braves should not be in that group and that their record is somewhat warranted. Now, I haven't necessarily looked at how many of those games against over 500 teams were the one-run games where the Braves have not been clutching those and all of that. But yeah, this is, Lav points out the ESPN Power Index has the Braves at 22nd. I think that's probably where you need to see the Braves right now. And coming out of this trip will give you, maybe not decide the rest of the season, but will give you a clear indication of where your team is. You didn't take advantage of the easy part of the schedule. Now you're in the tougher part of the schedule. But 4-2, 5-1, okay, you're closer to 500. You feel like if we can maintain this momentum, we can potentially go and be in a position to buy at the deadline. If you go 2-4 or 1-5, it feels pretty obvious they're going to be selling, and they're going to be not tearing it down, but they're going to be moving some of the expiring contract pieces like a Marcell Ozuna. And again, not that they'd get much for Raisel Iglesias, just like they wouldn't get much for Jared Kelenic. People keep asking. But we will find out. By the time we talk again on Monday, we'll have a much better idea after just 3 games where this team stands. Everybody who's here in the live chat, thank you for being here. I appreciate all, I think there's 145 of you guys. Thank you for being here. If you're listening on audio, do me a favor. Leave a 5-star review for the show, Apple, Spotify, YouTube Music. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so that you know when we go live with the next live show, as well as drop our daily episodes Monday through Friday at noon. Until next time, this has been Braves Today.